Hey guys, tonight we tumble back a few centuries into a world where your laundry routine looks nothing like the cheerful little spin cycle humming in the corner of your modern apartment. Instead, picture yourself trudging across a muddy track at dawn, a wicker basket biting into your forearms, the smell of damp linen and stale sweat mingling with mist from a nearby brook. The cold is so sharp that your fingertips ache before you even dip them into water, and you realize you probably won't survive this. At least, not without some cracked knuckles and frost-nipped skin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time is it in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel at the water's edge, balancing on half-slippery stones, and lower a bundle of linen chemises into the stream. The water bites like ice. The brook itself is lively, chattering over rocks, while your arms quickly go numb. This is laundry in early modern Europe, roughly the 16th to 18th centuries, when the word routine meant a ritual battle with dirt, sweat, and stubborn grass stains. A bar of perfumed soap is a rare luxury, not a default. What you got are your hands, maybe a wooden paddle, and the rushing water itself. The soundscape is rich. Water smacking against stone, fabric flapping as you slap it clean, neighbors' voices drifting across the stream as others bend into the same task. Your body aches, but at least you're not alone. Wash day in this era is both misery and fellowship. You might catch gossip about who's courting whom, or mutter complaints about landlords raising dues again. Historians still argue whether laundry was more a private chore or a communal spectacle, but here at the brook's edge, you can feel it's a bit of both. Your hands plunge, lift, wring, repeat. The fabric grows heavy, saturated, dragging at your shoulders as though the clothes are punishing you for daring to clean them. In some regions, you'd use a wooden battledore, a flat paddle, to thwack the cloth against stones, forcing out grime. It's strangely satisfying, a drumbeat of survival. And yes, one scholar once compared the sound of laundry day to a percussive symphony echoing through valleys, which is a poetic way of saying your ears ring with endless wax. A mainstream fact drops in here. Watercourses really were the heart of washing culture. In France, streams outside villages doubled as wash sites, and by the 18th century, towns even built communal washhouses called lavoirs. But rewind to the earlier period, and you're squatting on mud or slipping into shallow banks. Try not to lose your footing. The danger's real. People sometimes toppled in, skirts dragging them down, which might explain why children were often worn away from the task. And then, a quirky tidbit. In some alpine valleys, women timed their washing around church bells, dragging their linen down precisely when the angelus rang, so that everyone was out there together, scrubbing the holy rhythm. Imagine your laundry schedule, dictated not by an app notification, but by the clang of iron bells echoing across mountains. That's a push notification with extra reverb. Your back stiffens as the hours crawl on. You wring, fold, soak again. Soap is scarce, so you rely mostly on mechanical force and the cleansing properties of moving water. If you're lucky, you might have brought a sachet of herbs, rosemary or thyme, to freshen the pile, though the truth is that clean linen still smells faintly of sweat. You can't escape it. Even nobility, with their access to better soap, carried a faint tang under their perfume. A joke slips in here. You can scrub until your knuckles crack, but honestly, you're just hoping to get the shirt from battlefield disaster down to politely tolerable. It's not a glow-up, it's damage control. The air is cold enough that steam rises from your own breath as you pause to stretch your aching spine. You eye your neighbor's basket and notice she's been beating the same sheet for what feels like an hour. Maybe she's venting rage at her husband through the cloth. You smile a little because you've done the same, pummeling laundry doubles as anger management. Early modern stress ball, one damp linen shirt. And here's where scholarly debate hums again. Was washing considered women's work exclusively, or did men occasionally wade in? Some records suggest men helped when the load was huge, especially in rural households. Others insist male dignity stayed firmly away from buckets and soap suds. Either way, Standing here, your arms sore and your shoes soggy, you know it's no light task. By midday, the brook's edges glisten with frost where splashes have frozen. Your skin burns raw, but you're strangely proud. Every garment scrubbed here is one step closer to household order. One step away from vermin, foul odors, and embarrassment at church. Laundry isn't about vanity. It's survival, dignity, and a bit of public reputation all at once. And that's the thread pulling you forward, basket by heavy basket. Oh, and a final little joke for night. If modern influencers had to shoot wash day content in this century, their ring lights would short-circuit the second they hit the stream. You shoulder the dripping pile, muscles trembling, and turn up the path toward home, already thinking about what comes next. The strained alchemy of ashes and water waiting in the kitchen hearth. You stagger into the dim kitchen, dripping bundles slung down beside the hearth. Your fingers are stiff from the brook, but you know the real ordeal begins here, because in early modern Europe, plain water rarely finishes a job. What you need is lye, a word that sounds innocuous enough until you realize it's basically medieval bleach brew from the bones of the fire. You crouch by the ash pit, scooping yesterday's fire dust into a wooden trough. The texture is soft and powdery, ghostly gray. Mix it with hot water, and you get a slippery, caustic liquor strong enough to sting your skin. Historians still argue whether households made this lye casually or treated it as a risky experiment, but you can tell from the burn in your nose that this is no gentle potion. You pour carefully, watching the mixture cloud into a murky brew. The smell isn't pleasant. It's smoky, bitter, faintly metallic. Now, you plunge a shirt into the trough. The cloth soaks, turns dull and heavy, and the liquid works its way deep into the fibers. You swish and stir, hoping the ashes are strong enough to lift grease stains, but not so strong that they'll eat holes through the fabric. This is where the balancing act comes in. One woman's miracle whitener is another's disaster, a shirt ruined in an afternoon. Mainstream fact. Throughout much of Europe, especially in northern regions where olive oil soap was scarce, ash lye was a standard. From Norway to Germany, households collected fireplace ashes all winter, storing them in barrels for spring wash days. In places with hardwood forests, the resulting lye was stronger, producing better results. If you lived in a poor hamlet, you couldn't dream of buying imported soap. You relied on this fiery concoction. And the quirky tidbit. Some people believe you could test the strength of your lye by dropping in a raw egg. If the egg floated, the brew was strong enough for laundry. If it sank, back to the fire pit you went. Imagine calibrating your cleaning power with breakfast ingredients. Though if the egg cracked, congratulations, you just invented lye-flavored omelet. You need the fabric, shifting around in the alkaline soup, and your knuckles smart. The liquid nibbles at the cracks in your skin, reminding you that laundry isn't just tiring, it's hazardous. Early modern hands were marked by this labor, reddened, roughened, perpetually on the edge of chemical burn. You grimace, flexing your fingers, but keep stirring. The room fills with steam, smoke from the hearth blending with the acrid tang of lye. It's not exactly a spa experience. You cough, blink tears from your eyes, and think, somewhat bitterly, about the scent of detergent ads your future descendants will enjoy. If only they knew that their fresh alpine breeze fragrance had a prequel called Smoked Ash Pit with irritation. As the brew simmers, you reflect on another ongoing debate. Did people in this era wash their clothes frequently, or did they stretch out intervals to weeks, or even months? Some scholars argue that linen was rinsed often, because linen undergarments absorbed sweat and needed refreshing. Others insist laundry was so grueling that households put it off until absolutely necessary, piling up mountains of linen for a one-seasonal scrub. Looking at your cracked hands and aching back, you know which side you take. You stir, lift, and wring, leaning on the heavy stick. The cloth seems to sag even more, as if offended by your efforts. Occasionally, you glance toward the door, where the breeze sneaks in and teases the smell away. The thought of hanging all this to dry feels impossibly far away. A joke helps lighten the misery. In truth, you're basically a chemist without credentials, throwing ashes into water, stirring, and hoping you don't invent the next explosive reaction. Called the Breaking Bad Early Modern Edition, minus the sunglasses and RV. Your neighbor once swore that adding certain herbs to the lye kept moths at bay. Rosemary sprigs, lavender blossoms. Even a few slices of lemon if you lived in warmer climates. The mixture smelled a bit less like doom, and maybe, just maybe, moths respected the effort. But most days, you're lucky if the lye doesn't strip the color from your apron. The minutes stretch into hours. Your shoulders ache from hauling fabric through the cauldron. Your breath clouds the air. Somewhere outside, you hear the distant clang of a bell, reminding you that life goes on even as you churn in your cauldron of firewater. One last historical quirk. In some towns, ashes were so valuable that bakers or brewers sold their fireplace remains to washerwomen. Nothing wasted. Even destruction became commerce. The economy of laundry revolved around soot, sweat, and smoke. Finally, you drag the garments out, dripping gray liquid across the floor, wringing them over a bucket to save every drop of lye for the next load. They're pale, not exactly sparkling, but you can sense they've shed some filth. You hope they'll whiten further once the sun touches them, but for now, you stack the damp heap and lean against the wall, chest heaving. Another joke for good measure. You glance at your raw hands and think, well, at least you'll never need an exfoliating scrub. The lye's already 2 steps ahead. The ash brew hisses as it cools, a ghost of fire lingering in the corner of the room. You survived another round. But your work isn't done. Soap, that elusive luxury, waits in the marketplace, where southern imports clash with northern improvisations. You'll find yourself drawn to those fragrant, blocky treasures soon enough, comparing, sniffing, and wondering if they're worth a week's wages. The next morning, you wake to the sour, sweet smell of damp cloth and ashes still lingering in the kitchen. Your hands are sore, your nails rimmed with gray. But before the week is out, you'll have to confront the mysterious, fragrant cousin of lye, soap. And here's where the laundry world divides between the lucky and the not-so-lucky. You step into a bustling market street, the stones slick with mud, vendors calling out in a dozen dialects. Somewhere near the southern stalls, a merchant unwraps a block of soap imported from Marseille. It's smooth greenish, faintly scented of olive oil and herbs. You lean in, sniff, and your mind reels. It smells almost luxurious compared to your smoky ash brew. Of course, it also costs nearly as much as a chicken, which makes you pause. Mainstream fact. By the 17th century, soap production in southern Europe had become an established craft. Marseille, Castile, and Naples were famous for their soaps made with olive oil, producing hard, clean-burning bars that traveled north in trade caravans and ships. In England, Venice soap was considered a near-exotic import, its quality spoken of in hushed tones. You weigh the bar in your hand. It's heavy, dense, promising a clean your lye could never quite achieve. But across the marketplace, in a darker corner, another vendor offers a lump of northern soap. Tallow mixed with resin. It smells faintly of mutton fat and pine tar, a scent that would cling to your linen long after wash day. This is the everyday stuff, the soap for households that couldn't dream of Mediterranean imports. You wrinkle your nose but admit, soap is soap. It gets the job done, sort of. A quirky tidbit slips in. Some towns actually regulated who could make soap. In Marseille, the profession of master soap boiler was carefully monitored, with rules about how many cauldrons you could use and how pure your olive oil had to be. Break the rules, and the guild might fine you, or worse, shut down your workshop. Imagine soap having its own union, complete with bylaws and neighborhood disputes. Cleanliness had politics. You wander further, watching women barter for small chips rather than full bars. Many households couldn't afford entire blocks, so soap was cut, measured, and purchased in slivers. A tiny piece might be reserved for collars and cuffs, the visible bits, while the rest of the garment still suffered through ash lye. Laundry economics, down to the inch. You pause to smell the Marseille block again, trying not to look too enchanted. The vendor grins knowingly. He's seen that look before. Someone torn between budget and aspiration. And here's the scholarly debate that lingers. Did people in early modern Europe truly crave soap in large quantities, or was it still seen as a luxury, a kind of optional sparkle for the wealthy? Historians disagree. Some argue soap became increasingly common by the 18th century, spreading even into middle-class homes. Others say it remained an occasional indulgence, a prestige item flaunted when neighbors came over. You tuck the bar back down, sighing, and imagine the moment you'll actually rub it into cloth. Soap doesn't just clean, it foams, bubbles, makes the whole act feel gentler, almost playful compared to the acidic bite of lye. For a moment, you fantasize about endless suds, like the froth of waves against a southern shore. Then reality returns. Your purse jingles with only a few coins, and you know tonight you'll be back at the hearth with ash water. A joke drifts in. You picture some future archaeologist holding one of these bars, announcing solemnly, "This ancient artifact shows humanity's devotion to hygiene." And you, standing here in the 17th century, would probably laugh and say, "Devotion? More like desperation with a hint of goat fat." You watch as a child sneaks up to the soap stall, pokes a finger into the soft block, then runs off giggling while the merchant curses. That's the allure. It's tactile, fragrant, strangely mesmerizing. It promises a kind of cleanliness that borders on fantasy, especially in cities where chamber pots spill into the streets. Clean linen is one thing. Clean living space is another. Soap is a rare oasis of purity. You finally walk away with compromise, a small jar of olive oil soap, carefully wrapped. It's just enough to send a handful of linens, enough to make wash day feel less like punishment and more like hope. The rest of your basket will still suffer through ash lye, but at least a chemise or two might carry a whisper of rosemary and olive groves. And here's another quirky detail. In some places, soap wasn't only for laundry. It was rubbed on wooden spoons to keep them from cracking, smeared on leather to soften it, even used in folk remedies for sore throats. Which means that the bar you cradle isn't just laundry gear. It's an all-purpose wonder, a Swiss Army knife of fat and ash. As you shuffle home, your mind plays with the contrast. On one side, a block of olive-scented green, gleaming like a jewel. On the other, the harsh gray slurry of your hearth. Two versions of the same idea, cleanliness, but worlds apart in smell, feel, and price. You tuck the bar away, smiling faintly. Laundry, you realize, isn't only a battle with dirt. It's also a negotiation with status, economy, and identity. Clean linen doesn't just keep you healthy. It makes a statement about who you are and what you can afford. Soap, whether imported or homemade, whispers stories about trade routes, guilds, and the reach of empires. One last joke for the day. You think, if early modern Instagram had existed, the hashtag #SoapHaul would have been absolutely dominated by southern merchants flexing their olive oil blocks, while northern villagers posted blurry photos of lumpy gray lumps captioned, "At least it works." Back at home, you set the bar down, careful not to waste a flake. Tomorrow, you'll gather with neighbors at the wash house, where soap becomes not just a tool, but a social prop in a swirl of chatter, judgment, and laughter. You shoulder your basket of damp linen, and that precious sliver of soap stepping onto the dirt path that leads toward the village wash house. The morning air is cool, the sun climbing slowly, and you can already hear the distant rhythm, wooden paddles slapping fabric against stone, voices rising in chatter and laughter, the occasional burst of gossip that carries over the fields like smoke. The wash house, when you reach it, is a low timbered building by the stream, its walls darkened with years of steam. Inside, women bend over troughs, sleeves rolled, arms red with effort. Some stand knee-deep in water, lifting and dropping heavy linen, their movements so practiced they almost resemble a dance. You slide into crowd, greeted with nods and raised eyebrows. Mainstream fact. Communal washhouses were fixtures in many European towns by the early modern period. In France, they were called lavoirs, often maintained by the town, covered to shelter women from rain and sun. In Germany, shared laundry spaces were common near rivers and mills. These places weren't just practical, they were social hubs, especially for women whose daily lives were otherwise confined to home. You spread your bundle, laying out shirts and chemises, already noting who has finer fabric, whose garments are patched. Comparison is inevitable. Everyone pretends they aren't looking, but eyes flick sideways. Cleanliness is competitive. You want your linen to gleam whiter, smell fresher, hang straighter than your neighbor's. And with that soap shard burning a hole in your pocket, you know you might have an advantage. The paddling begins. You dip cloth into the stream, lay it on the stone slab, and bring down the wooden beater with a rhythmic thwack. The sound is hypnotic, echoing across the washhouse. Strike, flip, strike again. Foam spatters up, dampening your face. Muscles burn, but your mind drifts, carried on the tide of chatter around you. Quirky tidbit. Some communities use special laundry songs to keep rhythm while beating cloth. Verses passed down like lullabies, each slap punctuating the melody. Imagine a choir of washerwomen, synchronized by labor, harmonizing about soap stains and perhaps a sly joke about a neighbor's dirty sheets. Laundry wasn't silent, it was musical. You unwrap your soap, feeling every eye swivel subtly toward you. Olive oil soap here is a status symbol, like showing up a luxury handbag centuries too early. You rub the block into a collar, working it into a soft lather. The foam smells faintly herbal, and you swear the fabric brightens instantly, though maybe that's just your pride talking. Historians still argue whether these communal spaces empowered women, giving them freedom of movement, networks of support, and even political gossip, or reinforce their burdens by tying them together in endless labor. You sense a bit of both. There's camaraderie, but also sharp tongues. Someone mutters about another's ragged shift. Someone else laughs a little too loudly at a missed stain. You chuckle under your breath. The washhouse is basically the early modern version of a social media feed. Plenty of likes, but just as many trolls. You paddle harder, sweat mingling with spray. The stone is slick beneath your hands, and you wonder how many generations of women have stood exactly here, backs bent at the same angle. The thought is oddly comforting. You're part of an unbroken chain of suds and slaps. Another joke bubbles up in your mind. You imagine a man strolling into the washhouse, trying to offer helpful tips. He wouldn't make it 10 seconds before someone whacked him with a laundry paddle and sent him stumbling back to the tavern. Domestic spaces, after all, had their own fierce rules. You glance around and notice subtle exchanges happening. A woman trades a handful of soap shavings for a bundle of herbs. Another offers a slice of bread in return for help wringing a particularly heavy sheet. The washhouse doubles as a market, economy stitched into sweat and lather. Your arms ache. Your shirt clings damply, but your bundle gradually shifts from gray and limp to pale and fragrant. You feel a thrill of victory. The olive oil soap hasn't disappointed. Even your neighbor pauses to sniff, her expression betraying a hint of envy. Small triumphs matter here. They ripple through community like whispers. As the hours pass, conversation drifts from local scandals to broader worries. War rumors, taxes, the price of bread. News travels quickly when women gather, each scrap of information folded into the fabric of the day. You realize the washhouse isn't just about cleaning linen. It's a clearinghouse of knowledge, an invisible network shaping how households think and act. You pause to ring out a shift, twisting until water streams onto floorboards. Your fingers are swollen, skin wrinkled like parchment. Still you smile faintly. There's something oddly satisfying about the shared misery, the sense that your effort is mirrored by dozens of others. Loneliness dissolves in suds. The last garments hang over wooden racks or spread in baskets, ready for drying under the sun. You tuck your soap fragment carefully away, knowing it will have to last. Around you, the washhouse empties slowly. Women carrying damp bundles home, back straight despite the weight. The paddles rest, the troughs grow still, and the echo of voices lingers like fading song. One last quirky detail. In some towns, men accused of crimes were sentenced to work in washhouses as punishment, scrubbing filthy linens under the sharp eyes of washerwomen. Talk about humiliation. You might face battlefields without flinching, but try enduring laundry duty with 20 sarcastic women critiquing your folding technique. You leave the washhouse, basket heavy but spirit strangely light, feeling part of a world both grueling and alive. Tomorrow, the fabrics will flutter on the line, white flags of victory against dirt. And yet you know, drying, storing, and warding off the elements are a battle all their own, one you'll face with equal determination. The walk home is slow, because your basket drips steadily, each step sprinkling little trails across the packed earth. Damp linen is heavier than you'd like to admit, and every muscle in your arms aches. But the work isn't over. Laundry never ends with the paddling. The wet bundles now face their next ordeal, drying, folding, storing, and somehow defending against nature's army of pests. You spread the garments out on the village green, alongside dozens of other fluttering linens. The effect is strangely beautiful. Rows of white chemises and shirts, like a sea of sails awaiting invisible winds. A breeze catches a sleeve, lifts it, makes it wave as if to greet you. The sun warms your face, but also reminds you the stakes. One sudden rain shower, and all this work collapses back into damp misery. Mainstream fact. In much of early modern Europe, laundry was dried outdoors on grass, hedges, or ropes strung between trees and poles. The practice even gave us the term bleaching grounds, wide spaces where sunlight and air whitened cloth naturally. Sunlight was prized not only for drying but also for bleaching. The ultraviolet rays, though no one knew the science, helped lift stains and brighten fabric. You kneel to spread a shift carefully across the grass, smoothing wrinkles. And immediately, the quirky nuisance appears. A cow wanders too close, curious about this buffet of linen. You wave it away, half laughing, half exasperated. Quirky tidbit. Animals really did sometimes munch on drying laundry. Sheep, goats, even geese have been known to chew collars and hems, adding unexpected ventilation to your garments. Still, the drying field is lively. Children dart between lines. Women sit in clusters with baskets in their laps. Gossip continuing as if the washhouse simply overflowed into the meadow. There's laughter when a gust of wind lifts a chemise skyward, briefly transforming it into a ghost before it crashes back down in the grass. You check your own garments nervously. Will the olive oil soap have left its fragrance? You lean close to the drying sleeve, inhale and sigh. Yes, faint but present, a whisper of rosemary. That's victory. Historians still argue whether households dried and stored their laundry primarily outdoors or indoors, especially in colder climates. In Northern Europe, drying racks sometimes stood in lofts or kitchens near hearth smoke, giving cloth a distinctive odor that lingered for days. Was that intentional preservation or simply desperation against constant drizzle? The debate continues. You imagine draping sheets inside your smoky cottage. They'd emerge clean but perfumed with last night's stew. You chuckle quietly. Maybe that's the origin of eau de cabbage. Not exactly the scent you bottle. But once laundry is dry, storage becomes its own challenge. Moths, silverfish, and mice lurk in shadows, waiting to nibble your precious fabric. To fight them off, women stuff chests with herbs. Lavender, rosemary time. The scent wasn't just pleasant, it was practical. You press a sprig of lavender between folds of linen. Imagining future, you pulling out a fresh chemise that still carries summer's perfume. There's also the matter of folding. Today you wrestle a stiffened sheet, arms spread wide, fabric snapping in the breeze. Folding seems simple until you're holding a piece 3 times your size. Try not to drag it through the grass. A neighbor chuckles at your struggle, and you retort with a smile. Maybe by the time I'm 60, I'll master corners. Folding is its own art, passed quietly from mother to daughter, whispered in gestures more than words. You think of how these linens, once folded, will be stored in heavy wooden chests, sometimes locked. Linen was wealth. A dowry might be measured not in gold, but in stacks of shirts and sheets. Each clean piece is a banknote, and you, with your aching arms, are minting currency for your household. A joke surfaces. If someone robbed your house, they'd probably skip the furniture and run off with your laundry chest. Imagine police description. Wanted, suspect hauling 3 dozen freshly pressed chemises. Approach with caution. Garments are very white. Evening shadows creep across the meadow, and women gather up their dry goods. Some pieces are still damp, stubbornly thick, so they're draped across hedges to finish overnight. You carry your basket again, lighter now, but heavy with care. Tomorrow you'll tuck each item away, layering herbs, checking for pests, refolding when creases go wrong. And here's another quirky detail. Some households mark their laundry with embroidery, initials stitched into hems, because mixed UPS were common in communal drying fields. Imagine grabbing the wrong chemise and realizing weeks later you've been wearing someone else's lucky shirt. Better to personalize, even if your stitches are crooked. As the stars blink awake, you sigh, shoulders sagging. The day has stretched long, from soapy paddling to sunlit folding, but the work has ripple effects. Clean linen means fewer fleas biting at night, fewer infections brewing in wounds. Laundry isn't glamorous, but it's healthcare, survival disguised as drudgery. Your arms ache, your basket is full, and yes, smile tugs at your lips. Today's victory was small but tangible. A hint of soap, a field of fluttering whites, a chest filled with lavender-scented cloth. Tomorrow, the rhythm resumes, but tonight you rest knowing your linens whisper of sunlight and rosemary instead of ash and sweat. The chest creaks as you ease it open, a heavy wooden box that smells faintly of resin and lavender. Inside, folded linen rests like pale treasure, carefully stacked against the possibility of mice, moths, and mildew. You slide today's clean garments into pile, layering sprigs of herbs between them, then shut the lid with a satisfying thud. For a fleeting moment you feel rich, not in coins, but in cloth, the real currency of your household. But then your eyes shift to the corner of the room where yesterday's stained linens still lurk in a smaller basket, hidden like guilty secrets. These are the harder jobs. The stubborn stains, the tears, the discolored patches that mock your efforts. Washing is one thing, repairing and refreshing is another battle entirely. And tonight, as the moon slides higher, you settle onto a stool and begin that quieter labor of mending. Mainstream fact. Mending was an essential part of laundry culture in early modern Europe. Clothes and linens were far too valuable to discard casually. Patching, darning, restitching seams, and reinforcing cuffs were weekly rituals. Skilled hands could extend a garment's life by years, even decades. A chemise with a dozen patches was not shameful. It was testimony to careful stewardship. You pick up a shift with a faint wine stain near the collar. Soap hasn't erased it, but vinegar and salt might. You dab the cloth, muttering, hoping the stain will fade. Vinegar stings your nose, sharp and acrid, but it's worth the experiment. Historians still argue whether people cared about complete whiteness or simply presentable cleanliness. Some say snow-white linen was an obsession of the elite only. Others argue even common folk value brightness as a visible badge of order and virtue. You squint at the fabric, thinking, presentable? Close enough. Quirky tidbit. Urine, stored until fermented into ammonia, was a favorite stain remover and brightener. Entire households saved chamber pot contents in jars, delivering them to fullers and dyers, or sometimes just keeping a bucket handy for laundry day. You laugh under your breath. Imagine explaining to a modern detergent commercial, for the whitest whites, just add a splash of your own. You'd lose the endorsement deal in about 3 seconds. Needle in hand, you turn to a tear at the cuff of a shirt. Thread slips through your fingers. The fabric resists, but soon the rip is bridged by careful stitches. There's satisfaction here, too. The quiet mending, the sense of reclaiming what might otherwise unravel. You murmur a joke to yourself. This shirt has more scars than a retired knight. But laundry maintenance isn't only about appearance. It's survival. Holes invite more tearing. Stains attract pests. Neglect today becomes disaster tomorrow. Each repaired seam is a stitch in the fragile fabric of your household economy. And the pests? They are relentless. Silverfish creep into chests, chewing little moons into fabric. Moths flutter unseen, laying eggs that will hatch into voracious larvae. You sprinkle crushed rosemary between folds, whispering like it's an incantation. Women of the time treated herbs as allies, little soldiers fighting an endless war against a chewing horde. You remember hearing that some families smoked their linen with juniper wood, letting fragrant smoke penetrate the fabric, a shield against insects. The downside? You'd smell faintly of bonfire until your next wash. But maybe that wasn't so bad, better smoky than moth-eaten. Here's another fringe detail. Some households actually rub bacon fat on boots and coarse garments, believing the grease kept fabric supple and pests uninterested. You shake your head, suppressing a grin. Smell like breakfast. Repel the moths. Not a bad slogan. The room is quiet except for the crackle of fire and the faint rasp of your needle. Outside, owls call. You pause, listening, then return to your work. Laundry, in its way, stitches you to time itself. Cycles of use, where repair, renewal. Your mind drifts back to the wash house. You imagine neighbors whispering about stains or holes, drawing silent conclusions about your household's competence. It's no small pressure. Clean, mended laundry wasn't just about hygiene. It was reputation. A fabric resume displayed on every drying line. A yellowed shirt could be interpreted as laziness, a ripped chemise as poverty. You smirk. Forget resumes and LinkedIn endorsements. Back then, it was your undergarments doing the talking. Hours slip by. Stain after stain, stitch after stitch. The basket grows lighter as each garment returns to the chest, not perfect, but better. You sit back at last, stretching your cramped fingers. There's a deep, weary pride in this hidden part of laundry, the part no one sees. Washing might happen in public, but repair happens in the quiet, an invisible labor that saves your household from unraveling thread by thread. Tomorrow you'll wear these garments again, and no one will notice the patches or faint discolorations. That's the point. Laundry's highest achievement is invisibility. Clothes so carefully they blend back into daily life, unremarked, unmocked. You close the chest once more, sealing in the scent of lavender and vinegar, rosemary and sweat, sunlight and patience. Then you blow out the candle. Laundry sleeps now, resting until the next storm of dirt and labor descends. And you, too, finally let your body fold itself into rest, patched together just like the garments you guard. Morning light slides in through the shutters, and with it comes the rustle of trade. Laundry, you realize, isn't always a private household matter. For wealthier families, or for those simply too pressed for time, outsourcing was common. You tug your cloak around your shoulders and imagine yourself not as a washer, but as a client, stepping into the bustling world of professional laundresses and washerwomen. You walk down a cobbled street, basket in hand, but instead of joining neighbors at the riverbank, you head toward a courtyard where laundry workers gather. The air smells of lye, smoke, and damp cloth. Here, the economy of cleanliness thrives. Mainstream fact. In early modern Europe, laundry services were part of a thriving informal economy. Washerwomen, often widows or unmarried women, earned coin by scrubbing, boiling, and bleaching garments for others. Some cities even regulated the trade, requiring laundresses to register or pay fees. They were essential to urban life, keeping the wardrobes of merchants, clerics, and even aristocrats in usable condition. A line of women waits to collect bundles. Their aprons are soaked, their hands reddened by lye, but their voices are loud and cheerful. You overhear bargaining. One shirt washed for a penny, but two for a penny and a half. There's laughter, haggling, and a constant rhythm of work. Quirky tidbit. Some washerwomen were notorious for doubling as gossips. Laundry offered perfect access to the private stains of the city, literally and figuratively. Deliver a noble shirt, and you might note the strange smells or spots, weaving tales of indiscretions before the cloth was even dry. Whole reputations could flutter on a line, like a badly patched chemise. You grin, thinking, forget social media leaks. Back then it was your laundress tweeting your secrets to the neighbors. Historians still argue whether washerwomen were respected artisans or marginalized laborers. Some records suggest they enjoyed steady, if modest, income, sometimes forming guild-like associations. Others portray them as precarious workers, often mocked for low status and accused of theft when garments went missing. You can picture both, a laundress with a sturdy business and another, desperate, accused unfairly of stealing a silk stocking that was probably eaten by rats. You hand over your basket in this imagined marketplace, and the laundress eyes the fabric critically. She weighs the cloth in her hands, muttering about the difficulty of removing soot from sleeves. Payment is up front, no credit. Laundry teaches trust, but not too much. And here's a little joke whispered by washerwomen themselves. We wash their clothes, but not their souls. The line gets a chuckle, because everyone knows stains sometimes tell more truth than confessions. Not all professional laundering happened in open courtyards. Wealthy households sometimes employed live-in laundresses who spent entire days tending linens in back rooms with steaming cauldrons. You imagine the ceaseless rhythm, stirring sheets with wooden poles, hanging them on rooftop lines, and pressing them with heated irons. The wages were small, but the intimacy of handling another family's linens gave these women a strange, invisible power. Another curious element: laundering could be seasonal employment. During festivals or after winter, demand for clean linen surged, and laundresses swelled the streets like migrating flocks. Cities buzzed with the sight of women carrying dripping bundles to rivers, turning public spaces into living laundromats. You picture yourself weaving between them, the chorus of gossip and splashing echoing like a second heartbeat of the city. There's vibrancy here, work that looks like chaos but is, in its way, perfectly choreographed. Sometimes disputes erupted: whose garment was whose, who paid late, who accused whom of shrinking a shirt. Imagine shouting matches across baskets, sleeves flapping like white flags that meant anything but surrender. And occasionally, scuffles broke out, soap clods flying like snowballs. You smirk. Laundry fights. Less bloody than tavern brawls, but probably more embarrassing. Economic realities also surface. For the laundress, payment was survival. Coins from each bundle went to bread, rent, or firewood. She knew the value of every stain scrubbed, every shirt returned neatly folded. And in a strange reversal, her own garments might remain unwashed. Too little time, too little soap. She made others presentable while wearing patched sleeves herself. By midday, the city hums louder, carriages rattling by, merchants shouting, church bells ringing. But in this corner, the soundtrack remained steady. The slap of linen against washboards, the hiss of steam, the chatter of women shaping both fabric and rumor. You collect your laundry later, garments whiter than you could have managed at home, pressed flat and tied in neat bundles. The laundress wipes her hands on her apron, accepts her fee, and offers a sly smile. Did she notice that awkward patch on your chemise? Probably. Will she tell the neighbors? Almost certainly. Walking away, you weigh the trade-off. Your arms spare the ache of paddling, your linens cleaner than ever, but your secret's slightly less safe. Laundry, it seems, is never just about dirt. It's about who sees it, who whispers about it, and who profits from making it disappear. You tug at your sleeves, not out of discomfort, but from the faint awareness that even the cleanest garments can smell faintly of the work that saved them. The scent of lye, herbs, or even lingering smoke clings to fabric like a shadow. And tonight, as you sit by the fire, you let your mind wander the heart of it all, what laundry meant, not just in soap and water, but in reputation, ritual, and rank. Because laundry, in early modern Europe, wasn't only about hygiene. It was a signal, a costume, a public announcement stitched into every thread. When you step outside tomorrow, the whiteness of your linen tells a story louder than your words. Mainstream fact: clean linen was a primary symbol of personal cleanliness in this era. Bathing was infrequent and often distrusted, but linen undergarments, frequently laundered, were believed to wick away dirt and impurities from the body. A person could be considered clean, even holy, if their shirt gleamed white, even if their skin hadn't touched soap in weeks. You picture yourself strolling into church, chemise bright against your cloak. The neighbors notice. Clean, pressed linen whispers that you are diligent, virtuous, respectable. A yellow collar, on the other hand, might spark side-eye glances. Laundry became a moral scoreboard, a measure of how carefully you manage your household and your body. Quirky tidbit: some sermons of time literally use laundry as a metaphor for the soul. Preachers thundered that sin stained the heart like wine stains on linen, and only repentance could scour them away. You smile, imagining the congregation nodding solemnly, while secretly thinking about that stubborn grease patch on their cuffs. Lord, forgive me, and also please forgive that bacon spot I can't seem to lift. Historians still argue whether whiteness in clothing was mainly about hygiene or more about class signaling. Was a spotless shirt really proof of virtue, or just proof that you had a laundress on retainer? Maybe both. You can picture a poor farmer's wife scrubbing until her fingers bled just to make her family look a little more respectable on Sunday, while a noble had her laundry staff quietly achieve the same result in some smoky back room. And laundry had its rituals. Sunday was often the big day to showcase one's freshest garments, the whole congregation turning into a kind of fashion parade of whiteness. You imagine the rustle of freshly washed sleeves, the faint crunch of starched collars, the collective sigh of relief as everyone pretended not to notice the one unfortunate soul still in yellowed linen. Reputation extended into more intimate spaces. 2. A household's pile of laundry reflected its order. When you visit someone, catching sight of neatly folded stacks in their chest suggests prosperity. A basket of neglected, sour-smelling linen, on the other hand, whispers of chaos. Laundry was a silent ambassador of domestic life. Here's another joke. You might trick the neighbors into believing your family is virtuous, but the washerwoman knows better. She's seen the stains, the tears, the odd odors that betray the real story. You can put on a clean shirt, but you can't launder away everything. Even royalty understood this. In palaces, armies of laundresses boiled and bleached the monarch's linens until they practically glowed. White garments became synonymous with purity, nobility, even divine favor. When ambassadors visited, they were greeted not only by jewels and armor, but by the subtle, blinding brightness of immaculate linen. Of course, laundry could also be weaponized. A servant accused of negligence might be shamed for presenting stained cloth. A noble family could fall under whispered suspicion if their household linen looked less than dazzling. Clean laundry was fragile armor. You had to keep polishing it, or it failed you. And there was vanity. 2. People perfumed their linen with rose water or lavender, not just to repel insects, but to announce refinement. Imagine leaning closer in conversation and letting a faint floral note drift toward a companion. A silent brag. Yes, my shirt smells like a garden. Yours smells like damp wool. There's also the matter of undergarments. You recall how people rarely wash their outer clothing, while cloaks and heavy gowns might go months without a rinse. But linen, soft against the skin, was constantly rotated, washed, and replaced. It was the true mark of cleanliness. If your chemise gleamed, no one cared that your doublet smelled faintly of smoke. Historians debate whether ordinary folk truly obsessed over this, or whether it was mainly an elite fixation. Some argue peasants just needed their clothes clean enough, while others say even the poorest valued the status of whiteness, striving for brightness however they could. You sit, poking the fire, imagining both pictures. A farmer's wife bleaching shirts in harsh sunlight, a duchess's laundress delicately starching ruffles until they stood like frozen waves. At its core, laundry meant belonging, to society, to respectability, to the human need to be seen as clean and proper. You felt the pressure yourself. Don't pretend you haven't. Even today, a stained shirt before meeting makes your heart sink. Back then, it could sink your reputation entirely. You lean back, hearing the logs crackle, realizing that every garment in your chest is not just fabric. It's a declaration. Laundry is as much about identity as it is about hygiene. Each wash, each stitch, each carefully dried shirt is you saying, "See me, I am respectable. I am clean." The fire dwindles into embers, and with the softer glow you drift into quieter, almost ritualistic side of laundering. The way it seeped into festivals, superstitions, and the invisible scaffolding of daily belief. Laundry, you realize, wasn't just drudgery. It was tangled into the sacred and the strange, the hopeful and the fearful. You can almost hear it. The flap of linen in the night wind, the hiss of boiling water, the soft crackle of starching irons, domestic sounds that doubled as omens. In villages across Europe, people whisper that when a sheet blew off the line at midnight, it foretold a death in the household. You step outside, in your imagination, and see a white sheet riding like a ghost in the breeze. Comforting? Hardly. Practical? Well, it's cheaper than hiring a fortune teller. Mainstream fact. Many communities tied laundry days to the church calendar. Certain feast days, especially around Easter and Christmas, were seen as inappropriate times to do the wash. Mixing holy celebration with soaking shirts was considered irreverent. Some towns even fined women who laundered on Sundays. You picture yourself sneaking a wet chemise behind a cottage on a Sunday morning, hoping the priest doesn't wander past and scold you for spiritual negligence. Quirky tidbit. In some parts of rural France and Germany, there was a belief that washing clothes in the river during certain nights, especially around All Saints, invited spirits to come scrub alongside you. Not your usual friendly ghosts, either. These were said to tug at sleeves or leave your sheets damp forever. You grin, thinking. Forget haunted houses. Imagine haunted laundry piles. Terrifying, but admittedly tidy. Historians still argue whether these laundry taboos reflect deep religious anxieties, or were simply clever ways to enforce rest days. Were villagers truly worried about demons in a washtub, or did the local clergy just want to make sure nobody skipped mass to boil socks? Both explanations swirl like suds in the same bucket. Rituals also clung to stains. Wine on a wedding shirt could be a bad omen unless scrubbed before dawn. Blood on linen, whether from childbirth or accident, was often wrapped in cloth and buried, as if the act of laundering couldn't fully erase it. The earth, not soap, was tasked with sealing the memory away. You imagine yourself walking down to the wash house during midsummer. The air is thick with heat, and women sing as they beat clothes against stones. Some of the songs, though, are half charm, half tune, little rhymes meant to coax stains out or keep sickness away. Out, out, foul mark, back to the devil's bark, one might chant, half serious, half joking, while scrubbing at a stubborn blotch. And then there were festivals. In a few Italian towns, freshly laundered sheets were hung across streets during processions, creating bright banners of purity. Laundry wasn't hidden. It was proudly displayed, like a community declaring itself collectively clean before the saints. You can almost see the white sheets glowing under lantern light, a cathedral made of cotton. Everyday rituals existed too. Some households sprinkle holy water into the wash on certain feast days. Others slipped herbs into rinse water. Sage to keep away pests, rosemary to guard against evil eyes. The line between hygiene and magic blurred, as easily as wet dye. Here's a little laugh for you. One superstition claimed that if you left socks soaking overnight, mischievous sprites would wear them and stretch them out, which honestly is a perfect scapegoat when your stockings sag. Oh no, not my fault, just goblins again. Belief stretched to gender roles as well. Men were sometimes mocked if they dabbled in laundry, seen as stepping into women's sphere. Yet sailors, soldiers, and students had no choice, scrubbing their own linen while muttering like reluctant apprentices to the gods of soap. And with that necessity came their own rituals. Sailors swore that never washing a shirt at sea kept storms away, while others swore the opposite. That dirty laundry cursed the voyage. You picture the deck lined with flapping shirts, each one a tiny flag of defiance against Poseidon's moods. Historians debate how seriously people held these superstitions. Were they binding rules, or just convenient excuses for when things went wrong? Perhaps both. A storm might sink a ship, and the crew will remember the one sailor who washes socks on a forbidden day. Blame attaches itself as easily as grease to linen. As you drift deeper into thought, you realize how intimate these rituals were. Laundry touched life, death, luck, and love. A shirt wasn't just cloth. It was a vessel for meaning. Washing it wasn't just scrubbing. It was negotiating with forces larger than yourself. So when you next lift a damp sheet from the tub, you feel not only the weight of water, but centuries of superstition clinging to its threads. You shake it out, watching droplets scatter in the firelight, and wonder, are you merely cleaning or quietly participating in a ritual as old as belief itself? The last embers in the hearth glow low, and as you sit with the faint scent of soap still lingering in your imagination, your thoughts turn to the long ripple that laundry sent forward. How centuries of beating, boiling, wringing, and bleaching slowly transformed into the sleek machines humming in your apartment basement today. Laundry, you realize, is a story that never really ended. It only shifted its tools and tempos. Mainstream fact. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries brought enormous changes to laundry. Soap manufacturing expanded. Soda ash became cheaper, and bleach was produced on an industrial scale. The centuries of women boiling linen over fires gave way, slowly but surely, to mechanical aids. By the mid-1800s, hand-cranked washing machines appeared, wooden drums with paddles inside, promising to reduce the back-breaking hours of scrubbing. You imagine yourself staring at one, marveling. So, it's a barrel that does the beating for you? Why didn't we think of this sooner? Quirky tidbit. One early washing machine design literally involved strapping dirty laundry to the inside of a small carriage wheel and letting a horse pull it around. The jostling was supposed to simulate beating and agitation. You chuckle softly. Horse-powered laundry might be the only form of exercise where both man and beast get equally annoyed. Historians still argue whether mechanization actually freed women from drudgery or simply shifted expectations. Was laundry easier, or did society just demand more frequent washes now that machines existed? A familiar trap. Every innovation meant more work disguised as convenience. Suddenly clean enough was enough. Your neighbors expected spotless shirts every single day. You imagine early laundries in cities. Steaming rooms with rows of mangles, large rollers that squeeze water from cloth, and boilers fed by coal. Women still bent and sweated, only now under the roar of industrial noise instead of the quiet hum of riverbanks. Progress always comes with new blisters. The 20th century tightened the rhythm further. Electricity brought powered washing machines, spin dryers, and eventually the fully automatic washer. Clothes went in dirty, and with a soft mechanical sigh, they emerged rinsed, spun, and ready for the line. For the first time in history, people could step away from the task and let machines hum on their own. You picture yourself leaning against a doorframe, sipping tea, marveling at how your ancestors would have thought you were a wizard. And yet, not everything changed. The social weight remained. Even today, laundry is tied to identity. Fresh clothes can mean confidence in a job interview. A stubborn stain can still invite judgment. You may not haul buckets to the river anymore, but that faint anxiety, do I look clean enough? Respectable enough? Still clings like damp fabric on a cold day. Funny thought. Centuries ago, people scented their linen with lavender water to impress others. Today, you spritz ocean breeze fabric spray, basically pretending your laundry took a vacation without you. Different bottles, same game. Some traditions linger in surprising places. In rural Europe, communal wash houses remain active well into the 20th century, echoing the same gossip and ritual as before. Even laundromats today carry that communal hum. You walk in with a basket, nod at the stranger folding socks, share a brief kinship in the hypnotic spin of tumbling clothes. And with globalization came new quirks. Bright synthetic fabrics replaced simple linen. Chemical detergents replaced ash and lye, and electric dryers removed the smell of fresh sun. Historians debate whether something intangible was lost, whether the ritual of airing clothes outdoors and beating them against stone carried a cultural richness that the whir of a machine can't replicate. Maybe they're right. Maybe the smell of laundry soap and the breeze mattered as much as the clean shirt itself. You lean back, stretching, and realize the story of laundry has been one long balancing act between necessity and meaning. From riverside chants to mechanical drums, from spiritual omens to detergent jingles, washing clothes has always been about more than just getting the dirt out. It's about respectability, identity, belonging, and sometimes, just sometimes, about survival. And as you let your eyes grow heavy, you feel the centuries fold like linen in a chest. Each layer, each era, stacked one on top of another, carrying its own scent, its own weight, its own whispered stories. Laundry never really leaves you. It just waits quietly in the basket, reminding you that history itself is cyclical. Always tumbling, rinsing, repeating. Now, as the final echoes of soap and stone fade into a hushier room, let your breathing slow with the same steady rhythm of water lapping against riverbanks long ago. The story has carried you through centuries of boiling kettles and sun-bleached lines, through laughter and superstition, through pride stitched into the whiteness of linen. All of it, now, can dissolve into the gentle stillness of night. You picture a single sheet, damp from the wash, swaying lazily in the summer breeze. No clamor of work remains, just a whisper of fabric against fabric, a soft lull that belongs entirely to rest. Imagine the cool weight of freshly laundered linen tucked around you, the clean scent calming your thoughts, pulling you deeper into comfort. There's nothing left to scrub, no stain that lingers, no basket waiting impatiently at the door. In this moment, the centuries fold into silence, and the only work left is to drift. You might even smile at the thought that somewhere, centuries ago, Someone else laid down in freshly washed linen, whispering the same sigh of relief that rises in your chest now. The past is folded, pressed, and set aside. All you need is here. Warmth, quiet, and the soft hum of time moving gently forward. So let your body sink, let your thoughts loosen like fabric released from a tight ring, and let sleep come over you slowly, peacefully, completely. The story of laundry is finished for tonight. The story of your dreams is just about to begin. Sweet dreams.